Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast, endless mountain range, the towering, icy Himalayas, where the air is thin and the wind howls like a warning. You're alone, surrounded by snow-covered peaks that touch the sky, when suddenly, you spot a footprint. Not just any footprint, a massive, human-like track stretching over a foot long, pressed deep into the frozen ground. And at that moment, a thought flickers across your mind, a name you've heard whispered in myths and legends. Could it be the Yeti? The Yeti is no ordinary mystery. For centuries, this elusive, ape-like creature has been the stuff of nightmares, fascination, and obsession. Known by many names, the Abominable Snowman in the West, the Mete or Migoi among the Himalayan locals, the Yeti is woven deeply into the cultural fabric of Nepal, Bhutan, and Tibet. It's said to be a powerful, ancient being that lurks high in the mountains, a beast both feared and revered by those who call the Himalayas home. The story of the Yeti isn't just a simple monster tale. It's a saga filled with countless encounters, mysterious footprints, eerie sightings, and near encounters that have left even the most seasoned adventurers trembling. The legend really took root in the West in the 1920s when British mountaineers reported large, inexplicable footprints on Mount Everest. Imagine being one of those mountaineers, isolated in one of the harshest climates on Earth, and stumbling upon footprints that don't belong to any known animal. A wild man of the snows, they said, a creature with a mystique so captivating that even the bravest explorers couldn't ignore it. The excitement only grew in 1951 when Eric Shipton, another British mountaineer, snapped a photograph of a large footprint in the snow near Everest. This wasn't just any footprint, it was a gigantic, 13-inch mark in the otherwise untouched snow, complete with distinct toe impressions. When the photos were released, the world was stunned. News outlets everywhere featured the image, and the myth of the Abominable Snowman burst into mainstream culture. People wanted to know, what kind of creature could leave such a footprint? In the following years, the hunt for the Yeti became an obsession for many, including wealthy Americans like Tom Slick, who poured fortunes into expeditions. Slick's teams claimed they found all sorts of strange signs, hair samples, massive footprints, even haunting calls echoing in the night. Though they never found the Yeti, these expeditions added fuel to the mystery. Could it be that something ancient and undiscovered was watching, hiding just out of sight? Then came another tantalizing tale in 1970 when Don Willems, a British mountaineer scaling Annapurna, claimed he saw the Yeti with his own eyes. Through his binoculars, he saw a creature, tall, upright, and undeniably strange, stalking the snowy slopes. When Willems tried to approach, the figure disappeared, leaving him with nothing but a haunting memory and a vivid story. Willems was no ordinary thrill-seeker, he was a respected mountaineer. His encounter added a weight of credibility that was hard to dismiss. But these encounters were not just the fevered dreams of adventurers. They were backed by physical evidence, or so people thought. Footprints, hair samples, strange calls echoing from the mountains, but the physical clues were as elusive as the creature itself. Each hair sample, each footprint, was analyzed, debated, and scrutinized by scientists worldwide. Some said it was an undiscovered primate, others insisted it was simply a bear, distorted by snow and time. But every time the mystery seemed solved, another strange discovery would stir the pot, keeping the myth alive. Modern science has cast its own theories. In 2014, a British geneticist named Brian Sykes analyzed some of the alleged Yeti hair samples. His results? Some samples matched DNA from an ancient polar bear species. This revelation led to a new hypothesis: maybe, just maybe, the Yeti wasn't a mythical creature but a rare bear. Yet, not everyone was convinced, and some hair samples remain unexplained, adding more layers to an already intricate mystery. The locals, however, have a different perspective. For the Sherpas and the Bhutanese, the Yeti isn't just a legend but a part of their spiritual world. In Bhutan, they speak of the Thmigoi, a being that doesn't just hide from humans but possesses the supernatural ability to become invisible. This creature, they say, is a guardian of the mountains, a mysterious force that protects nature from human intrusion. The belief isn't just superstition, it's an ancient respect for the wild, an acknowledgement that some things in this world are beyond our understanding. Imagine a Tibetan shepherd, a man known for his calm nature and courage. This shepherd, they say, was once walking his usual route along a high, fog-covered ridge when he felt an intense chill, not just the cold of altitude, but a deeper, bone-shaking fear. He turned slowly, and there, just at the edge of his vision, stood a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was towering, covered in dark fur, with piercing eyes that seemed almost human. He froze, transfixed by those eyes, which held a silent message: "This is my land. Leave." The villagers say he stumbled back, dropping his staff, and fled down the mountain, barely able to speak by the time he returned. It took him days to recover, and when he finally spoke, he could only whisper, "Migoy," the name they call the Yeti in those parts. To this day, locals in his village say he's never been the same. As the world grew fascinated with the Yeti, countless expeditions were launched by those hoping to solve the mystery once and for all. Each one returned with tales that added yet another layer to the myth. Sometimes, they would return with strange artifacts: a tuft of coarse hair snagged on a tree, a blurry photograph, a cast of a footprint. Yet, for every piece of so-called evidence, there were a dozen more questions. One evening, just as an expedition crew was setting up camp on a remote part of Everest, they heard something, an eerie, distant howl. It wasn't a wolf or any other animal known to roam those parts. It was lower, more guttural, and seemed to echo off the mountain walls in a way that made it sound like it was coming from every direction at once. The crew members looked at each other, fear settling in their eyes. They stayed up that night, weapons close by, listening to the strange calls that seemed to get closer, then further away, taunting them. It's encounters like these that have convinced even the most skeptical. The Yeti seems to leave just enough evidence to keep us searching, yet remains a step ahead, always just out of reach, always watching. And let's not forget the spiritual side of the story. The Sherpa and Tibetan people view the Yeti not as a simple animal but as a being that lives on the threshold between our world and something older, something primal and deeply tied to the mountains. They speak of it in hushed voices, warning that to seek the Yeti is to disturb a sacred creature, one with powers beyond human understanding. For them, the Yeti represents not just the unknown, but the dangers of human pride, of believing we have conquered every corner of the world. The more you listen to these tales, the more you realize the Yeti isn't just a creature to be captured or categorized. It is, perhaps, the embodiment of our own need to seek out the unknown, to stand on the edge of the world and wonder what lies beyond. And in a way, that's the Yeti's greatest power. It gives us just enough to keep us searching, hoping, and maybe even fearing what we might find if we ever truly catch up with it. With all these stories, one thing becomes clear: the Yeti is not an ordinary cryptid. It's a symbol, a reminder that in our highly mapped and documented world, there are still places we cannot reach, forces we do not understand, and perhaps, creatures we are not meant to find. The Yeti embodies humanity's unquenchable desire to explore, to push the limits of what we know, and to believe that there are still secrets left in the world, hidden away in the snowy, windswept peaks of the Himalayas. And that's the allure of the Yeti, a creature that leaves behind no evidence but endless curiosity, a legend that, whether real or imagined, will continue to echo through history as long as there are mountains to climb and mysteries to uncover. Perhaps it's not about finding the Yeti at all, but about what the search reveals about us.